Hello everyone, I'm Kevin, and today I'm going to talk to you about 8 things you should not say to someone who is estranged from a parent. This list is taken from Psychology Today, and I will have the original link down below, and you can read a little bit about other examples to go to each thing, but I wanted to give my kind of perspective on these 8 things. So there are 8 statements that are common things that people like us hear. And if you didn't know, I don't have a relationship to my parents. If you want to know why I don't talk to my parents, my story is up there, so you can just click it. It's the first part of the series that is called Child of Toxic Parents, where I talk about different aspects of being a child of toxic parents and someone who do not have a relationship to my parents. I have not talked to my parents since last summer to be exact. I have only met my parents 3 times since 2 years ago when the whole thing kind of broke, so to speak. As I said, you can just click the little flag and watch my full story about what happened and kind of why it happened and how I am today in regards to like what happened and everything that has to do with like the story, so to speak. So you can just click that. The first thing is they must have done something right because you turned out fine. And this one is very weird, I would say. Like they must have done something right because you turned out fine. Yes, I turned out fine. Did I turn out fine thanks to them? No. And as you know from my story, I am not the same person that I was 2 years ago when the whole thing, as I said, broke. Like when me and my parents stopped talking. Like that happened 2 years ago. And I am not the same person I was back then. I am a lot healthier mentally and physically. Like I am healthier in all aspects of my life. The thing is also like with having parents you no longer talk to. Like parents who are abusive in any kind of way, parents who are toxic in any kind of way, they are not always, it's not black and white, it's a lot of gray. Just because someone is abusive doesn't mean that they have good moments. Like that is a big reason why a lot of people stay with their abusive partner or abusive parents, because but they're so loving sometimes. Like they have these good moments, and if I leave them, then I will lose those good moments, you know? And so yeah, they must have done something right because you turned out fine. Yes and no. As I said, I made myself the person I am today. I was not a good person 2 years ago. I was not a healthy person. I had a lot of self-doubt. I did not love myself. I didn't care about myself. I didn't let myself have emotions. I was very I didn't accept emotions in myself. And I was weak. If I focused on myself, I was selfish. If I felt emotions and if I was clouded by emotions, I was weak, because I have, since I was a child, heard that I am oversensitive and that I'm weak and stuff like that because I cried. And I cried because I was depressed. But no one did anything. I don't know why. My parents said that, well, that's how she is. So no one did anything. Everyone thought I was oversensitive, over-emotional, and that caused me to stop feeling emotions, because if you hear that you're oversensitive, over-emotional, and you just want attention and people would avoid you if you cry, you learn to stop crying. That's what I did. I stopped feeling emotions, which came out through like self-harm, because it needed to get out. I had a lot of anxiety and stuff like that. So I was not emotionally, mentally, physically healthy at all. And yes, my parents have a lot to do with who I am today. I have a lot of things to thank them for, of course. Like I grew up with them, but they are not the full reason why I am the way I am today. That's what I want to say, that yes, I turned out fine, but I didn't turn out fine only because of them. I turned out fine because of my own work with myself, because of other people who have been important to me. I can't, like, this isn't a valid argument in that sense that I shouldn't be estranged. I shouldn't be estranged from my parents because they must have done something right, because I turned out fine. Saying that someone should go back to abusive people because they couldn't be so bad because you turned out fine is eliminating a lot of the work that we do ourselves and the other people in our lives who are important and who have helped us grow. And it is not a valid reason to go back to people who break you. And the thing is, I turned out fine, yes, but if I would go back to my parents, all of that work that I put in to be fine would crumble, and the person who was fine would no longer be fine. You know what I mean? The second statement is you need to stop wallowing in the past and move on. And, well, thank you, I have. I have moved on. And moving on doesn't mean going back. That's the thing. Like, you need to stop wallowing in the past and move on. It's like two things I want to talk about here. The first thing is the part with wallowing on the past. Like, this can be negative and this can be positive. For some people, it's a matter of strength. Like, you deserve to be mad. Like, this thing that happened to you shaped you in ways that people will never understand unless they went through the same thing. And wallowing in the past can be healthy because you learn from it and you work on it and you say that it's not my fault. Like, this thing that happened was out of my control. Then it's not wallowing in the past, even though other people see it like, oh, but you're still stuck in this thing that happened years ago. Like, you should just move on. Like, sometimes we need to look to the past in order to get better. We can move on with our lives and be happy and accomplished and proud of ourselves and, you know, everything, and still look back on this moment and feel mad. We can feel angry, we can feel sad, we can feel grief. And feeling emotions is always healthy. But you also, when you feel emotions, you also have to address the emotions and talk about them and go through, like, why am I feeling this? Like, I felt a lot of grief and a lot of anger at the thing that happened to me. And I have moved on, but I still go back to that moment and I still address it. I still talk to my psychiatric nurse, who is my contact person at the hospital, about the thing that happened, because we go through it and we go through my emotions, we address them, like, why did I feel this way and why do I continue to feel this way and how can I work on those things. The whole thing with the statements, in my opinion, is that you say that, well, since you're still thinking about this thing that was your trauma, you can't move on. And for some people, they need to move on by working on it. And that's, like, for most, I think, you need to work on the trauma to move on from it. But you can't ignore it and think that you're gonna move on and be healthy. Like, you have to address the things that hurt you, and you can move on, but you can still wallow. You can move on from it, no longer thinking about the trauma, and like, that's also, but saying that you need to stop wallowing in the past and move on makes it also, like, puts a lot of guilt on the person for having emotions regarding a trauma. Like, it's traumatic. It's a very bad thing that happens that causes a lot of issues for the rest of your life. And you can't just stop wallowing in it and move on. Like, you work with it. And that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of time. It's been 2 years for me, and I still, like, that's still what I talk to my psychiatric nurse about. Like, for our sessions, this is, like, what happened to me with my parents is still the main thing that I talk to her about. Even though it's been 2 years and even though I am happy today, I still need to work on that thing to know to feel better in my own emotions and to address my own emotions. Why am I feeling the way I feel and stuff like that? And the first statement is, it could have been a lot worse. Appreciate what you had. And this is so abusive to say. Like, don't ever say this to anyone, like, regardless. Like, if someone is, as I said, it doesn't matter if it's an abusive partner or an abusive parent or an abusive sibling or anything like that. If you have someone in your life who is abusive, a lot of people, including myself, think, oh, it could have been worse. Like, at least my parents didn't do this. At least my partner didn't do this. But that doesn't eliminate the fact that they did something that was bad. And like, you can't weigh two kinds of abuse against each other and say like, oh, but physical abuse is worse than verbal abuse. No, both are bad. You can't compare one kind of abuse to another. Both are abuse. Like, you can't eliminate the fact that both are abuse and say that you have it good because it could have been worse. Because that's not helpful, believe it or not. But like, for me, with the entire thing, with it could have been worse and stuff like that, it's not helpful. And you should never think that it could have been worse. No, but it was bad, and nothing can change the fact that it was bad, and making it worse, it still makes it bad. Like, it's bad. No matter what, it's bad. Yes, it could be worse, but if it could be worse, it would still be bad. Like, it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what form of abuse it was, how extensive it was. It's still bad. And that's what matters. And saying that, oh, it could be worse, doesn't help. And that's why you should not say it to anyone. And the whole, like, appreciate what you had. Like, yes, you can appreciate the good things, but you can still wish for better things. And the whole thing with, like, relationships at all is knowing how you deserve to be treated and finding someone who would treat you that way. And if we just take romantic relationships for example, you wouldn't stay in a relationship with someone who makes you unhappy and appreciate what you have and then marry that person. No, you would say that, no, we're not good for each other. I'm not happy in this relationship anymore. We're breaking up, and you go and you find someone else who might be better for you. Like, with every relationship, you learn, like, I don't like this, I need this. And then for the next relationship, you know that you need this. And if the person doesn't meet your needs, doesn't give you what you need in a relationship, you move on to the next relationship, and you continue that until you meet someone who makes you happy and fulfills your needs. Maybe not all of them, but and just saying that you should stay with someone because you should appreciate what you have is abusive. And it's not a nice thing to say regardless. Like, you shouldn't stay with friends either who treat you badly, because you should appreciate what you have. So why should we say that way about parents? And this fourth statement is, you only get one mother or father in life. Yes, unfortunately. Like, this is also something that is used to control people. Like, you have us as your parents and you're stuck with us now and stuff like that. But it's, as I said, yes, you only have one mom and one dad, but that doesn't mean that you will only have one family, because you can make your own family, Like, yes, you technically, if you have straight parents, you have one mom and one dad. If you have a same-sex couple as your parents, you have two moms or two dads. Or maybe you have a single parent. Like, it doesn't matter. Yes, you only have one of them. You only have one or two parents. Maybe you have more parents. But you only get the parent that you get. And nothing will change that. But that doesn't mean that you should put up with abuse. And that's also, like, for my parents. My parents have 4 kids. My mom has 4 kids. My dad has 2 kids with her. My mom has 2 kids with her ex-husband and 2 kids with my dad. But in total, 4 kids. And yes, they have the kids that they have. My mom has her 4 kids, my dad has his 2, but that didn't change them. Like, they didn't think that, oh, these are the kids that we have, now we have to take care of them and not be abusive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they were stuck with me, but that didn't mean that they would take care of me, and they had an obligation to love and support me, which they didn't. If you feel like this relationship is toxic, this relationship is abusive, you leave, because you have to choose yourself. Because yes, you only get one set of parents, but you also only get one set of yourself. And no matter what happens, you always have to choose yourself, because you are the only person that you will live with for your entire life. You are stuck with you, and you have to choose yourself. Yes, you only get one mom or one dad, or 2 moms or 2 dads, or whatever. But that doesn't change the fact that you also only get one of you, and that should matter more, in my opinion. And then we have statement 5. Look at all they did for you. They fed, sheltered, and clothed you. Yes, well, they were obligated by law to do so. What more do you want me to say? Like, literally, I didn't ask, like, hey, I want to be born. Can you two, like, do what you need to do so that I can exist? Like, no, I didn't do that. Like, they made the choice. They made an active choice to have a kid, no matter if it was planned or unplanned. My mom got pregnant. She knew she was pregnant, and she decided to keep the kid. It doesn't matter if I was planned or not. They decided to have a child and to keep it, me in this case. And so, yes, they fed, sheltered, and clothed me, but if they didn't, they would be criminals. So this is not a valid argument in that case. Like, you know, you're sitting with a friend and you're complaining about your work. Like, I don't get paid enough. The work hours are terrible. And your friend would be like, yeah, but you should, like, look at it from a bright side. At least your boss pays you. Yes, they are obligated to do so. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that is not a valid thing. Like, I don't go around thinking like, oh, my cats should worship the ground that I walk on because I feed them and I clean their litter boxes. No, I chose to have cats. They are my responsibility. I don't think like, oh my God, I have to take care of my cats. Like, oh my God, that is so much work. It was my choice. I made that choice to have cats. And that's the whole thing. Like, as I said, with the workplace, saying that you should be happy because you get something that you are obligated to get. It's like saying like I should be so grateful because I get paid for the work that I do. Like, at least my boss pays me. Like, no, they pay you because they're obligated to do so. My parents were obligated to take care of me, to feed me, to shelter me, and to clothe me. They didn't do it out of the goodness in their heart. They did it because they had to, because they made a choice to have kids. So, like, no. And statement number 6 is one that really gets to me, and it is, trust me, you will regret this when they die. Because this is so, like, to me, I was literally hospitalized for suicide prevention. 1 week, I was discharged from suicide prevention 1 week before my parents decided to leave me. And the reason that they left me was because I didn't get well fast enough. I didn't get energy to call my mom fast enough, so they left. Knowing I just left the suicide prevention center. Like, the possibility of me dying after they made that choice was very, very real. And if they had thought about what they were doing rationally, considering where I was, they would have maybe thought about that. Like, I'm not blaming anything, like my suicidal thoughts, I'm not blaming that on them. But I mean, they had a kid that they knew was suicidal and had suicide attempts and who was actually hospitalized for it. And they didn't think about this. The whole thing, like, you will regret this when they die. No. And the thing is, if I don't want to have them in my life when they're alive, why would I want them when they're dead? Like if my parents can make the choice that they made when I was in the mental state that I was, they're not people that I want or need in my life. No matter if I think that, oh, they're gonna die or like anything like that, it doesn't change the fact that they are not healthy for me and they are abusive and toxic. And also, like, you will regret this when they die. They have not regretted treating me the way that they did. They haven't apologized to me for the way that they have treated me. Also, like, the whole thing with that I will regret being estranged from them when they die, when the whole thing is I don't want them in my life because they're not good for me. That doesn't change that, like, feeling that I will regret not having a relationship to them when they're dead. That would be kind of like if they die next week and I feel regret that I didn't have a relationship with them, it wouldn't be that would kind of be me glorifying their life, that I could have actually had a relationship with them that would be healthy when that is not a possibility. And I have tried, but at the end of the day, they are not good for me. They are abusive and they are toxic to me. And if I would go back to them because I'm scared that I would regret it when I die, is not a healthy choice that I would ever make for myself. Because at the end of the day, I have to do what's good for me. I have to choose myself and what is best for me and what is healthy for me. And that is not a healthy choice. Going back to my parents is not a healthy choice. Statement number 7 is no one is perfect, so cut her some slack. Or in this case, I would say like cut them some slack. So like your mom, your dad, one of them, both, as well as like if you have 2 moms or 2 dads, if you have a non-binary parent. So I would say like, so cut them some slack instead. Yes, nobody is perfect. And that is the reason why I tried for 15 years. Like I tried for such a long time to have a good and healthy relationship to my parents. It's not like I woke up and they left, like, and they decided to break up contact with me and I would be like, yeah, okay, fine, let's go with that. Like, no, it's the whole thing, what happened 2 years ago, was built up for years and years and years. And I have tried so many times to have a good and healthy relationship to my parents. But at the end of the day, it didn't work. And they made a choice that was extremely abusive and bad for my health and for my life. And so, no, nobody is perfect, but that doesn't mean that you should excuse people who are toxic and abusive to you. And as I said, like, if you have an abusive partner, this is something that some of those people hear as well, like, you should stay with your abusive partner because nobody's perfect. When in reality, you should never stay with an abusive person, no matter if it's an abusive friend, partner, parent. Like, it doesn't matter. If they're abusive, you deserve better than them. Nobody is perfect. That is true. But have they tried to change to become healthy for you? And so cut her some slack. I'm not going to cut my parents any slack because they didn't try. And they didn't try. And I have tried so much and I have put so much energy into making a good relationship with them. But at the end of the day, it wasn't enough. Like, everything like that I put into our relationship wasn't enough to have a good and healthy relationship with them, because they decided that my mom feeling bad was worse than my mental illnesses, and the fact that I couldn't do what she needed me to do because of my mental illnesses. And the last statement is she did the best she could given her childhood, and so did he. And this is not an excuse, because if someone's parenting is greatly affected by their own childhood, they needed to have sought help. Like, if I wouldn't get help for my trauma, and if I wouldn't have like help from a professional dealing with my mental illnesses and my own trauma, I can't have that as an excuse, like, oh, I'm sorry I did that, well, my childhood was bad. Or like, I don't have a relationship to my parents, so you have to excuse my bad behavior towards you. No, it's on every single person to treat themselves. If you have a lot of trauma that you are not dealing with and that you are still feeling that you have a lot of issues with, you should get help to go through those and to address them. Because this is not an excuse. If my mom had a lot of issues with me because of her own issues with her childhood, that is not on me, that is on her. She shouldn't have done what she did. Like, she shouldn't have said the things she did. She shouldn't have done the things she did. Abuse should never be rationalized that way. Because, like, if you say that, in my case, if I would say that, oh, but the reason my parents did this bad thing is because of their own mental issues, it doesn't excuse the fact that what they did was bad. And it doesn't excuse the fact that the thing that was bad, if it could have been treated. Like, if my parents had had help, if they addressed the issues that they had and gotten help, this thing might have not happened. I don't know. I'll never know. But saying that I did the best I could given my childhood or given my trauma, given my issues in my life is not an excuse, because it's on you to not bleed on people that didn't cut you. I love that quote, by the way. Like, if you don't heal what harmed you, you will bleed on people who didn't cut you. And that's the thing. If this is true, that yes, maybe my parents did what they did to me because of their own unresolved issues from their childhoods, doesn't excuse the fact that they should have treated it. They should have addressed it. They should have gotten help for it. If it was such a big issue that it affected the way that they parented, that they took that it affected the way that they took care of their kids, it should have been treated. They should have realized that, oh, what happened to me when I was a child affects the way that I am taking care of my kids. So maybe I should do something about that. Like, you should always treat it. And that is a choice that you make, whether you're treated or not. But it's not on me to say that I should excuse someone's abuse because of issues that they had themselves. I have my own trauma, and I know for a fact that if I don't, I could have very easily said that, no, I'm not going to get help. I'm not going to talk about it to my contact person at the hospital, the psychiatric nurse. I could very much be abusive to other people because I would put my pain on them, and thus I would bleed on people who didn't cut me. But that is not an excuse to shitty behavior. Like, abuse is abuse no matter what. And it's also some people say that there is this pattern that kids who were physically abused as children, that there's this also thing that people say that if you are physically abused as a child, you have a higher, it's more likely that you are also going to be physically abusive, because that's what you learned, that parents are physically abusive. So when you are a parent, you will also be physically abusive, because that's it's a generational thing. Abuse is in a way a generational thing because of that. But if you were physically abused as a child or as anything, it's on you to make sure that you're not going to continue that cycle. And that's also something that is the whole thing with children of toxic parents. We have this thing that breaking the cycle kind of thing, that it stops here, that this cycle stops here. And I am making sure that when I decide that I want to have kids, I am going to be healed enough from my trauma and from the abuse that I faced that I will not do the same mistakes that my parents did to me, that I will do those to my own kids. And that is a choice that I continue to make. If you faced abuse and you know that you have issues because of those abuse that you have, that you are going through consequences of the abuse that you faced, you have to get help for it. You need to get treated for it. You need to talk to someone to to get help with it. And it doesn't have to be a professional in like mental illnesses or, you know, a psychiatrist or a therapist or anything like that. Like anyone you feel could help would help. Like just talking to a friend, like this happened to me, and talking to someone. Or there are a lot of ways you can heal, and you have to heal yourself in order to not continuing the cycle and to heal. Like you need to heal for yourself and for other people. I heal mostly for myself, but I am also conscious of the fact that I need to be healed in order to have a good and healthy relationship to anyone, no matter if it's a partner, it's a friend, or a future child. I need to heal myself to also have a good relationship with myself, if that makes sense. So those were the 8 statements from Psychology Today that I wanted to talk about and just give my perspective on and give examples from what I went through, so that you have like some more input, I guess, into like these things. And if you have any questions or if you have any thoughts or anything, please comment down below, or you can message me on Twitter. The link to my Twitter is down below, so you can check that out. And the original article by Psychology Today is linked down below as well. And please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. That would help me out a lot. And I will see all of you next time. Goodbye!